Good evening. Yeah, a bit more than that, people. I know you're tired, but come on. So, a quick show of yells. Is everyone enjoying a fantastic conference so far? I want to send out full respect to the garage track. I do. I want to be there. There's something right about me playing guitar in a garage. Okay, so let's get this going. Those who aren't aware of how this rolls normally, I do a song for about 5 or 6 minutes. I have got a song that is 16 minutes long. Not today, though. Not today. No. No one's ready for that. That's gratuitous, I believe, for a 40-minute talk. So I'm going to do a quick song that hopefully sets the stage for what I'm going to talk about. It's going to tell you about some problems that maybe you've experienced, maybe you're fortunate enough not to have experienced yet. But it's going to get us on the same page, and I'm going to explain how you can deal with that. All right? So let's do this.
Runaway
Thank you and good evening. Right, so let's talk about hell. Didn't expect that one, did you? Let's talk about hell, let's talk about production, let's talk about being wrong. So I'm going to ask you an awkward question. How many people here are willing to put their hand up right now and admit they've been wrong in the last 12 months? At work, you can limit it to that. Yeah. Good. Good. I'm going to tell you why that's the best thing you can be. I'm here for you, brothers and sisters. This is a sermon, didn't you know? Okay, how to be wrong. So first of all, those of you that don't know me or haven't seen me over the course of this conference at some point, who am I? I am Bertrand Russell. At least I wish I was, although he's dead, which is not the best thing to wish upon oneself. An amazing individual who spent most of his time thinking an awful lot about things that most people don't think a lot about. And that pretty much describes me. So that's what I do. That's why I'm on stage. And next year, you're going to be on stage, right? Next year, you're going to be one of these people that thinks way too much about stuff that we do. And you're going to end up here as well, I hope. If you are, give me a shout. Get in contact. I'll help you get on the stage. Not physically, but generally. Okay, so also I am part of a company. For a while now, I've been part of a company. This is a bit of scene setting. Myself and Sylvain. Sylvain, by the way, is the nicest Frenchman you'll ever meet. I'll let you decide how nice that is. He's absolutely phenomenal. And we built this company around chaos engineering, which is part of the theme of what we're going to talk about today. And what we do is help people do resilience engineering, which will relate to what we talk about. Okay, so first, what is wrong? We all know what it feels like, and many of us have just admitted to being it. But I want to frame it carefully in terms of what wrong actually means. So what do you do when you don't know what something means? You go to Wikipedia. Define it though. Before you go there, please define any term. What does it feel like? We're scared of wrong. Wrong is something that we never want to be. We're taught at school, don't be wrong. Wrong is bad. Wrong is something we talk to your parents about. So we get inbuilt in our psyches that wrong is something to be avoided at all costs. And that's the thing I worry about. It's the all costs part. So Wikipedia will tell you that being wrong, we don't like it because we're not correct. That's okay. We can sort of deal with that. That's not the thing that keeps me up at night when I might be wrong. That's not the thing I worry about. That's okay. But then you read a bit further. It gets worse. Injurious, unfair, or unjust. Now I'm starting to feel like I could go to jail. There's an awkwardness to this one now. This feels like I'm being a bad person. Then it gets worse, because now you're inflicting harm on others as well, without due provocation. I have no idea what due provocation is. But either way, now wrong is painful to others. And it gets worse, because then you can go literally to jail for wrong. And that's probably going to frame it to the point where you never want to be wrong in your life. Ever, right? Okay. So, it's okay, maybe it's all right. When are we ever wrong? Well, there's a big show of hands earlier. So that should start to make my argument for me. We are generally quite wrong quite a lot of the time. And when you define wrong as being the state of being mistaken or incorrect, we find when we look at what we do for a living that we are in a strange world of research and development in software. So we are constantly getting it wrong. In fact, I normally encourage you to adopt a mantra. The mantra goes like this. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. They don't know what they want. And that's situation normal. Anyone who tells you we're going to build another one of those things again, I bet you they follow it with the word but. We're going to change a few of the requirements, just a few little ones, like we're going to change the framework. I did that at a company recently, well, a couple of years ago now, where they turned around and said, we're going to change. It's okay, it's all exactly the same as before, but we were using .NET, now we're using Java. No risk then. So the bad news is, this is the best picture I could find of a doctor delivering bad news. The bad news is, we're wrong all the time. It's part of our job. We are computer scientists. Being a scientist means you're going to be wrong all the time. You're exploring how wrong you are. That's science. And we have great and public evidence of being wrong all the time. Even for the best engineers in our industry, we're still wrong. Everyone's wrong. It's okay. We just need to be better at it. So back to that scariness. Why is it scary? Well, I've got a theory on this. Because when you talk to someone about being wrong, you say, what scares you? And they say, oh, I'm worried about the risk. So what we're going to do is get a big, long exercise of risk analysis to make me feel a little bit better at night. Won't do anything about it. Put it in a big spreadsheet. Be fine. Everyone knows putting stuff in a spreadsheet stops it happening. But I have a theory. I don't think it's risk at all. I think we're just individual humans. We are worried about consequences. We're not worried about risk at all. We're really worried about what comes back down on us. And as organizations, you might be working in a bank, for example. And if you talk to anyone high enough in the bank, they'll probably tell you risk is what we do for everybody. But what they really mean is we help people avoid consequences, and we try to avoid them at all costs. Okay, so consequences are a problem. Back to us. Why are we so dangerous in this position? There's two things that go on in software delivery and development that are directly contributing to just how wrong we are. Number one, feature velocity. Go as fast as you can in the wrong direction. There's a very smart individual called Goiko Adzic. You should read anything he writes about. And one of the things he talks about is velocity is a strange metric to worry about. Surely direction is something to worry about more. And he's got a point. So feature velocity, but if we take that we're probably going the right direction, this isn't a talk about requirements and how we capture these things and sensibly navigate a problem space. This is about, if we assume we're going the right direction, then velocity is good. We want to go as fast as possible, perhaps. And then we think, though, it's diametrically opposed by the second factor. And the second factor is reliability. I worked at a wonderful company for a while where they did continuous delivery. They continuously delivered once a year. And I mention this because it was the most interesting thing to watch. They were dedicated to reliability. They worked in insurance. Insurance is something you worry about reliability quite a lot about. And so what they decided is the best way to do this, to manage this need for reliability, was for all of the project managers to get in a room once a year and do what they called signing day. Now, I can only assume there were special pens. And they would get these special pens, perhaps filled with the blood of innocence. And they would sit there with a piece of paper, and all these project managers would go and sign their names. I won't break the system. My release this year will not be a problem. Shh. Total theater. Didn't mean anything in the real world, but it was fascinating they felt they needed to do it, because they're right there on that wrong one where they're going, you're liable now. Don't be wrong. And then they would release, and of course it'd take 2 or 3 months to settle the release and actually have anything working again, and then they do the same thing next year. In fact, it would get worse because they'd sit there and go, oh, that was painful. Maybe we should be more careful. You know, maybe once a year is a bit much. So the problem is that we think these things are opposed. We think that they're fighting each other. Feature velocity versus reliability. It's a battle. It's a boxing match. I've got some great news for you. There's no conflict whatsoever between these two things. When you do them right, you can go as fast as you possibly can, and it turns into something where it's a plus for reliability. Systems can be better performing if you go quicker. Don't take my word for it. There's evidence out there. Who here has read the book Accelerate? Fabulous book. Not enough hands just went up. Now, I appreciate that it's not always an English-speaking audience here. But even if it's not, I'm sure that we can convince one of the authors to translate it into Lithuanian. Or maybe not. But we can certainly get you a hold of a copy. I would actually, and I'm going to be careful with this, there's a lot of people here, but I almost feel obliged ethically to buy people copies of this book. Because for once, it has science in it, in our industry. Not hearsay, not authors on stage hand-waving, real stuff. And so some of the things it points out are interesting, such as deploy frequency. These down the bottom here, these are the high performers. These are the people doing a really great job of moving quickly. There's your deployment frequency. And then there's everybody else. Don't worry if you're on that curve. You are not alone. But it gets more interesting when you see a few more stats. Change lead rate. So if, the amount of time before you're releasing your changes, the high performers, they're staying pretty consistent. If anything, they're getting quicker. They're doing it more often. That's weird. So we see this and we start to go, yeah, there's going to be a graph in a minute that's going to show failure. They're going to be way up. Okay, before we get there, mean time to recovery. Nice and low again. Perfect. Everybody else, oh my goodness, what's happening to us? Does anyone know what this curve here is called? It's called the curve of shall we build it again? It's that moment when you go, ooh, maybe we'll do it again because we'll get it right next time. No, you won't. You'll get it wrong again. Without fundamentally changing how you think about doing software, this is going to be your story. So let's avoid it. And the last one, my favorite one, is the change failure rate. This is the amount of change going in that causes a problem. This is the graph where it should have been reversed. Logically, it says everyone who's delivering quickly should be experiencing more failure. But they're not. Faster means more reliable. But don't worry. We've got some superheroes to come to our rescue. You could do microservices. Of course you could. Who is doing microservices right now? I'm not going to ask you for definitions, because I reckon we get one definition for every hand. We've got Sam here somewhere. I think I keep seeing Sam somewhere. Sam, get your hand up. Is he on? Yeah, we go. All right, Sam. He's got definitions on microservices coming out of every single strand of his very hairy head. So he'll tell you all about how everyone defines these things. So don't worry, we're doing microservices. And we've got tests, and we've got gates, and we've got pipelines, and we've got isolation. All these wonderful things we've worked hard towards. So don't worry, we're covered. We're done. But, a little story for you. There was another group of people that thought they were done as well. And I apologize if you've heard this story before. It's not a new story. It's an old story. But it starts with this lady here. Does anyone know who that is? I mean, not personally. Or if you do know her personally, fabulous. It's Margaret Hamilton. Lead tech, lead of how the Apollo missions, their software systems. She was in charge. But she's not the hero or heroine of our story. The heroine of the story is Lauren. Lauren is her daughter. Now, my workplace is my front room. And I have my daughter there. And anyone who's a parent will know that if you're working and you've got your kid there, what do? You find them something to do. Please don't bother Daddy for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, I'll take 5. Well, Margaret took Lauren to work. I have no idea how this went down with the rest of the colleagues at NASA. But she did, and she did what I did. She said, how can I keep my daughter busy for 10 minutes? Tell you what I can do. Let her play on the mission simulator. Some serious envy of this child, isn't there? What's your toy? That thing. Fabulous. So she goes and plays, and she does what any kid does. She breaks it. Very quickly. She finds a key combo that causes it to flush its navigational information out of the system. Awkward. But the important thing is the reaction of NASA and then the reaction of Margaret. The reaction of NASA was, don't worry. Our astronauts are made of the right stuff. They don't make mistakes. They're never wrong. The next mission involved taking this wonderful, iconic photo, beautiful photo. And it would never have happened without Lauren and Margaret. Because Lauren had found this particular key combo. Margaret hadn't really listened when they said, don't worry about it. And she'd written down some instructions about how this problem could be overcome. Because those astronauts, made of the right stuff, had found the wrong key combination and flushed the information out of the system. So don't worry, you could be wrong, they're wrong all the time, even when they're trained not to be. And it gets worse. Right, it gets worse because we have to recognize the enemy here. There's this thing called dark debt, which I'm a big fan of. I mentioned in the appetizer talk for this conference, I love dark debt because it sounds nasty. You almost want to go full Batman on it. It's dark debt. Black. All great movies start with black. It's dark debt. Dark debt is a really simple definition. I'll let John Allsport define it for us. Okay? It's something you can't design out. Sorry. The best engineer in you in the world is not going to be able to get rid of this stuff. It's there. It's waiting. It's going to keep you up at night. It's going to ruin your dating history. It's going to really upset your life. And we can't preempt it. It's going to be there. What we can do is perhaps get better at knowing it's there. And maybe starting to surface it. Okay, so if we go over to the business with this dark debt, the stuff that we're worried about, to convince a business person to do this, you don't need many numbers. You just need this one. Now, the problem is the business will see this. They'll see 1 hour of downtime costs more than $100,000 for 95% of us. That's not even Netflix. Netflix is in the millions per hour. And yet we spend very little money avoiding this, or trying to avoid some aspects of it, or better than that, getting better at it. And that's just lost revenue, right? All that number is lost revenue. That's not even the fuzzy stuff about goodwill. This is a hardline figure. It doesn't take into any account goodwill and all the other stuff that you lose upon. And I've got worse news for you. You're not covered at all. Very few companies. Everything you've done is not wrong. Well, not entirely wrong. But you're not covered for this. So I'm going to help you get covered for it. When you look at a microservice-based system, the reason it's not covered is they tend to look like they have many details. There are many details, not few. Lots of things, moving parts in a microservice-based system. Your rate of change is high, and it should be. Don't be the person that phoned me up and said, we're doing microservices. How do you deploy 43 microservices at once? Now, this is where the genius of consultancy comes in. Because your instinctive reaction is stop. But what you say is, that's an interesting question. Why do you think you need to deploy 43 microservices? Let's dig into that problem. Yeah, so fundamentally, they must have the wrong microservices here. But the whole point we did this was for speed of change. Because we're going to get it wrong. So we have to keep working and evolving it towards right. And the challenge here is how things are composed is not predictable. Here's where your dark debt comes in. There's lots of layers. There's lots of complexity. There's lots of communication. There's lots of dark debt. And just to make it more interesting, we tend to throw in lots of different heterogeneous processes and even polyglot languages, just to make it really fun. Okay, so reactions to this story tend to be ugly risk avoidance. Whoa, so we built this microservice-based system. Right, no one's touching it in production. Nobody. We've got it under lockdown. We're on a feature freeze. Oh. The other thing we do is blame each other. And actually, it's better than that, right? So when an outage occurs, a lot of people turn around and say, oh, you mustn't blame somebody else. You know, when you're trying to learn from an outage, you shouldn't blame somebody, because if you start blaming each other, you'll stop learning there. My experience is different. In an outage, it's too easy to take blame on yourself. The first voice that you'll hear that says you're to blame will be yours in your head. We blame ourselves. I mention this because I did a talk several months back, and I asked the room, does anyone here want to share a production outage? And this one individual did, more than I've ever seen anyone want to share an outage in their life. They got up, they came running towards the stage. It was a big stage. They leapt onto it. Now, normally, I don't like people sharing my stage because I move around a bit. And I subscribe to the Keith Richards School of Stagecraft. Have you ever seen Keith Richards when someone tries to jump on a stage? He hits them with a guitar. I couldn't do that because, first of all, this person was a giant, and I'm not. And second of all, before I could even get involved, he turned around to the whole room and he said, "It was me." Oh no. I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, what's he done? And he says, I took down the master node of a grid computing cluster that destroyed weeks of academic work. And at that point, you're starting to hope that he's not surprising everyone with this. Or it hasn't just happened. You know, he's sitting there, oh, right. But okay, so do you blame? Do you sit there? And it's fairly understandable. A natural reaction here is, that person should never touch a keyboard again. I can understand that, but that's the wrong reaction. Even he might say, I should never touch a keyboard again. Frankly, he might feel that. At that moment, I'd feel that. You have to dig deeper. So I asked, what was the command you wrote? And he sketched it out on my keyboard on the screen for everyone. And I said, can you show me the command you were trying to run? And he showed me the next one. 1 character difference in the name of the node. What sadistic creature is in charge of the naming strategy here? Answer is, it's not a sadist. It's not a sadist. It's somebody who never thought this would be a problem. Why? Because our admins are perfect. Yeah. So don't do blame. Blame is a cheap get-out-of-jail card for those that don't want to learn. A much better reaction than that is to recognize that being wrong is a key software skill. Celebrate your wrongness. Get better at being wrong. I am so tempted to launch a course called this. Being Wrong for Dummies does sort of have a ring. I want you to get much better at being wrong because it's a natural state of software delivery. It's important, though, to remember we have to make it safer. You can never make it entirely safe. But you can make it safer to be wrong. You can make it comfortable to turn to others and go, yeah, we were wrong. Oh, why we were wrong? Because if you don't, you won't learn from it because people will hide it. The worst dark debt out there is the stuff that isn't really dark. It's just in the partial shadows because no one wants to admit it's there. So when we do this, we can drive in technical robustness, but we need to go further than that. We can do zero blame. We can say we don't do blame anymore. By the way, saying it doesn't make it happen. If you live in a blame culture, good luck. It's a hard thing to change. It's worth it, but you do have another option. You can leave. You have to go way beyond blame, because that's where we discover the things that we need to learn from. But we have to keep that dark debt in mind. Okay, so what we're going to do is a deliberate practice. Deliberate practice, if you haven't encountered it before, is different from practice. When I sit out in the lobby with a beer playing guitar, I would say I'm practicing guitar. Not really, I'm drinking beer. But I just happen to have a guitar with me. Deliberate practice of guitar would mean, right, next week I'm going to be so much better at playing guitar than I am now. I'm sure you would all wish this. I'll be so much better, because here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to plan, I'm going to practice this way, and I'm going to aim in this direction. It's focused, it's planned, it's deliberate practice. And you're going to deliberately practice being wrong. How cool is that? And you do this because if you deliberately practice being wrong, you will be much more prepared for those undesirable moments, like when you've destroyed the master node of a grid computing cluster. You see, deliberate practice at being wrong is chaos engineering. That's what it is. We know bad things will happen. We know there's dark debt. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to throw a light on it. We're going to surface it. And we're going to practice for all those moments when we're in the heat and it's horrible and we've destroyed something and it's all gone to hell. And if you need to talk to your business people, it's an investment in resilience. We're going to get better at learning from how bad things can happen. It's a learning loop. It has to be, which is why it has to be safe. If we don't have safety in our learning loops, no one learns. And this is what it looks like. You start with situation normal. I'm going to ask you a question. Who here knows that their system, if you're working on one and it's in production, who here knows it's currently working? Raise your hand. I mean knows, not suspects. Okay. So there's people here know. Keep your hand up if your way of knowing it's working is no customers have called you yet. Yeah. Happens all the time. I've been to major financial organizations where they say the only way we know if the system's running is no one's calling us. So we need to know what normality looks like. Normality is a measure of, is the system working? If you can't do that, start there. Figure out how you observe and measure that. Then a bad thing happens. Then we fix, diagnose, detect, all of those things in the reverse order. All right? Panic actually should be in there first. By the way, you will never learn. Everyone says you can learn from outages. You can, but not when they're happening. If you're the person that sits back and goes, yeah, I know it's all gone to hell, I know. But let's step back and think about this for a little while. How did we get here? No, right at that moment, all you're going is, customers are calling. Oh my God, it's gone wrong. Who did this? All the things that you have to do to put the fire out. Eventually, you can zoom round to learning, and we're going to look at learning in more detail a bit later on. But that's where the good stuff is. And yeah, be a bit wary when someone does that, by the way. I'm always wary of, and myself included, when you put learning, you just put a brain up. It's like learning happens here. Learning's hard. Learning requires us to know that we're wrong. Because otherwise, well, we'd learn anything and do something better. And eventually, we can drive that learning into concrete improvements, which could be technical system robustness, or it could just be, you know what we'll do? We'll not name things with one character difference between the really critical stuff and the stuff we don't care about. So this is at the heart of what Casey calls never letting an outage go to waste. Learn from your outages. But post-mortem learning can be good. You know, learning about something after the horrific events is good. And we kind of expect it. No, you know, when I saw GitHub have its problem, I assumed that they were going to eventually be in post-mortem like explosion as soon as it's all done. They're going to be learning huge amounts from this. So it's good to do post-mortem learning, but wouldn't it be preferable if we did pre-mortem learning instead? Wouldn't it be great if we could learn when we hadn't set the world on fire. That's chaos engineering. It's science. We apply the scientific method to look at your systems, the systems we work on, and we figure out what should we be worried about. What weakness is there? What dark debt is there in the system? And then we use techniques to surface this, have evidence of it being there. And then we know that when we start to improve the system, we're not just causing more of the stuff. So in chaos engineering, it's the same loop. It just doesn't involve setting the world aflame, ideally. We do these things called game days and automated chaos experiments. Game days are fabulous fun. If you do one thing after this conference, do a game day. I'm going to ask you, anyone here does Dungeons and Dragons or has done in the past? This is company-sponsored Dungeons and Dragons. You have a team in a room, and you go, something's broken in staging. Let's see what we deal with. It's fabulous fun. I've done some amazing game days. I'll share one with you tonight, something for you to think about while you're drinking your beer at the party. I did a game day where I introduced this idea of we're all going to get in a room and there's going to be something broken in staging and you have to figure it out. You have to go and find it. But I noticed something. I noticed there was a hero in the room. You can always spot a hero. If you ask anyone else in the team, what would you do in this circumstance? And they say, I'd go and speak to Bob or Jessica. That's the hero. So I did something. I went to the boss and I said to the boss, I want to kill Bob. Bob's dead. And she said, okay. And I said, not obviously really, but I want him to be dead, like properly gone, off the grid. When we're going to do a game day. We're going to see how it goes. So we put Bob in a room with a DVD player because it's the only technical device he could have. Because if you give someone a mobile phone, what are they going to do? They're going to be on Slack. No, he had to be gone. So we did the game day. We got everyone in the room, and I said, there's a problem in staging. I need you to solve it. I can't tell you what it is. You're going to figure it out. I want to see how you diagnose it. The first reaction of the team was wonderful. Can't do game day today. Bob's not here. Okay, keep going, keep going. So they did. And this is why, if you're going to facilitate a game day, and I would encourage you to do so, as a dungeon master, what you get to do is be really careful about what they're doing. You're noting everything down, because you're going to learn from it. Now, one of the things I did is I had the one line through to Bob. So I was actually talking to Bob whilst they were doing the game day. And got about an hour or so into it, because a game day is not a day. It's about 3 hours usually. Got into it, and then suddenly Bob was on the line saying, stop them now. So I did. I cancelled the game day. I said, we stop there. They had logged into the wrong machines. Using the wrong passwords. And we're about to destroy a whole pipeline of microservices in production, trying desperately to find a fault that wasn't even in that system. Anyway, we learned a lot. That's another thing for you as well. Here's a sneaky one. I do game days where there isn't a problem. Get a bunch of your team in the room and say, we think there might be a problem in staging. See if you can find it. And they do. That's the thing. There isn't even one there. Great fun. As the dungeon master, my workload is tiny. I just need to point them at a system and say, good luck. So you do the game days. Automated chaos experiments are for when you can't do a game day. Game days are fun, but they are resource intensive on everyone's time. Automated chaos experiments are because we want to do this all the time. Turbulent conditions don't happen just when we do a game day. They happen all the time, so we automate these things because we can't physically do them all the time ourselves. Same loop, fixed, diagnose, detect, learning, improvement, hopefully. Okay. Another big fallacy of chaos engineering is it's only for infrastructure. Everyone here heard of Chaos Monkey? Yeah, I'd imagine so, right. I love and loathe Chaos Monkey. The problem with Chaos Monkey is it tells you a few things. It tells you, first of all, that chaos engineering is destroying virtual machines. It's not. It also tells you that you have to do it randomly for it to be chaos engineering. It's not. It also told everybody that chaos engineering only exists down here. Now, at the infrastructure level, that's usually where most of your weaknesses are relatively uncommon. Weaknesses arise in other places. So if you're running any sort of platform, maybe you're running, I don't know, Cloud Foundry, Kubernetes, have some fun. Ask yourself the question, what happens if I destroy the control plane of Kubernetes? Bad things happen. But it's a good question, because it happens. That's your platform. Your applications, the code you write, causes all sorts of fun. One of my favorite chaos experiments that everybody does and learns huge amounts from is simply introducing latency between parts of your system. The amount of assumptions there are in timeouts, circuit breakers, all sorts of good stuff that are never explored until you do this. And then there's the biggest cause of failure in systems, which is us. The people, the practices, and the process. We are wonderful engines of chaos. Whenever you look at the big outages, it usually starts with the phrase, an operator did X. Now you have to be very careful with this, right? Back to that blame thing. It's easy to say, oh, the operator, huh? People. But if you stop there, you don't learn. Okay, so we can learn after outages, but it's much better to learn before one. And this is the thing. Being wrong, being a chaos engineer, is a superpower when it comes to learning about how your systems react to turbulent conditions. So what I encourage you to do is get yourself sorted with a bit of chaos engineering, even if you just do game days. Honestly, I don't even like using the phrase just game days. They're so much fun, and they're so powerful. So if you just do that, you'll get better at being wrong. You'll get better at chaos engineering. I've got some stuff I work on when you're doing the automated stuff. So if you're doing automated chaos, and I'm hoping everyone here will come to my workshop on Saturday, where we will do it for real. We're going to stand up some systems, and we're going to abuse those babies. I call it 50 Shades of Microservices. I've never read the books, I'll be honest, but I think it's about improving through pain, no? So we're going to do some chaos on Saturday with these tools. And back to the books. First of all, who's downloaded this one here? It's free. Wow, come on, right now, not right now, but in a minute, don't destroy the Wi-Fi, but go and download this book and read it. It's a freebie. It's awesome. It's written by the people at Netflix about how they did chaos engineering. Now, the only warning I would give to you is it's about the people at Netflix and how they did chaos engineering. Some of the stuff in there is very specific to Netflix. But the main points they make is we're learning about how we surface, how a system deals with these turbulent conditions. The other book that you just need to go buy and read, try not to read it before bed. It's a bit dry. It's a science book. But it's a fabulous book, and it just sits there and reminds us what great looks like with empirical data on how you can be that good. Okay, you can avoid Sylvan, he's not coming over. This whole talk is about starting a conversation. Chaos engineering is new. It's got a cool title. Certainly a marketeer has been involved. But it's not about the cool title. For once, we have a really good label for doing science with our systems, about getting better at how systems might fail. The world needs reliable systems, and you are responsible for them. Use this technique to be better at being wrong. Thank you very much.